in more recent years, it was really weighing on me more, just hearing all that was going on. And what got me involved most recently was seeing Linda would share these things on this mom's group that we're part of that she's doing, or events we could go to. And I just reached out to her to see if I could find a way to get involved, even though I'm busy. I'm in graduate school. So just seeing that some other mom was doing it was helpful to me.
Great, that's huge. I think that's something we've seen over and over again, is that sense that there are other moms doing it is really permission for people to get involved. And I've heard a lot of moms say that they didn't feel like they belonged in some ways in the climate movement until they found other moms, because it sort of resonates with where they are. So thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Michelle, do you want to tell us sort of what got you excited about this?
Yeah, I think I was following you folks for, seems like a couple of years, just kind of like from Facebook and watching from afar what you folks are getting done on the East Coast. And, it sounded like a really great way to, do it in the house and, get together with other moms. And then when we had the last phone call, I really understood the value of, being able to talk to people about the situation, and it didn't have to include necessarily all of the scientific things and, that I've been reading about all over the place. I saw the value in connecting, so that's why I'm interested.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's another key piece, right, is that we don't need to be experts on the science, and having learned that what gets people involved is actually less facts and data, although that works for some of us, but that it's really relationships, and moms are really good at building relationships. Okay, and Linda, do you want to tell us why you're here?
Sure, and now I can finally see everybody. Okay, so why am I here? Well, I also am excited about working with moms, and I feel like there's nothing more important that we could be doing than working for a sustainable planet. So I think Mothers Out Front is the model that most appeals to me about mobilizing other parents to get involved, so I'm really excited to support those efforts.
Great, thank you. And Robin, do you want to say a few words? Or I know you've already shared your story with a lot of people, but.
Yeah, just real quick, we'll just repeat that I, got concerned enough about this a little more than a year ago that I just felt like I had to do something, and so the more I found out what moms can do, the more I wanted to share that with other moms, and just trying to find the right forum to share that, because it's kind of it's a very difficult thing that it doesn't come up in normal conversation. And when I found out about the Mothers Out Front house party, I thought that was the perfect way to get moms together and be able to sit down and talk about this issue so that we can take action. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Yeah, and I'll reiterate that I was doing climate organizing for about 7 years before I started with Mothers Out Front, and there were very few moms that came to the meetings that I facilitated and organized, and they were in public spaces and they were sort of advertised out there, but they weren't building on existing social networks. And I was actually a little bit skeptical when Kelsey first approached me and said we should organize moms, because it had been a tough nut to crack, and this house party framework and building on the networks that we have has been incredibly successful, and it's been we have not had to twist any arms at all. Like, it's been we get a couple of calls every week from moms all over the country who want to start Mothers Out Front chapters, and so this is, I really believe in this. Okay, so then my next question is, what do you see as the role and the goals of the house party at this point? Like, what's your understanding of its function? And we can just popcorn this one, meaning if somebody has an idea, go ahead and share what your thoughts are.
Introductions.
Can you say more about that? Introduction.
Kind of just introducing ourselves to each other and to the idea of getting involved with climate. Just kind of a first step, so.
Great. Any other goals we might have, or?
In my mind, I imagine showing that there is something people can do, like giving some kind of hope or just ideas that we all can get involved in some way.
Yep. Any other thoughts?
And just piggybacking on that, just to build a movement, right? To get more moms involved, make it more moms involved, get more moms involved, and soon the whole country's involved.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, you've hit on all. I had 4 bullet points, which were first, engagement, getting people to want to get involved and get to know each other and sort of, you know, find our people in a way, because it is a unique experience being a mom in this day and age, you know, facing climate change and thinking about our kids. And coming together often gives people hope. You know, I think the relief that comes in realizing you're not alone in having these feelings and that there's something that we can do together is really empowering and really can move people from feeling alone and disempowered to having hope and wanting to act. And I guess the one piece that wasn't mentioned is that it's also the first step in not just sort of delivering information, but of giving people the experience that this is their movement, right? That this is going to happen because they get involved and that we need them. So those are sort of the 4 sort of, you know, sort of core roles or goals that if you hit those things, if you get people to have that experience, you're in great shape. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit about, you know, what are you excited about in terms of thinking about being a house party facilitator, and what are you maybe nervous about?
Oh, I'll go. So I am excited about myself being more involved, doing something else, and hopefully helping other people to be involved. And I'm nervous. I'm an introvert, so I'm kind of quiet, and I'd say that's been a barrier for me for sure with things like this.
Yep. Anybody else feel that way?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all of us, right, to some extent. Yeah, it's scary to get up in front of people and do this, but it's a skill that can be learned. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that's helped me is realizing that it's not something that I need to be born knowing how to do. It's something that you can learn. And so that's really one of the purposes of this training. And this is really about taking risks and growing and growing as a person. You know, in addition to doing something great for the world, it's an opportunity for you to grow and go out of your comfort zone. So thanks for being willing to do that. Any other excitements and fears or nervousness that people want to share?
I'm excited about getting new people involved, possibly. What I'm nervous about is turning them off, because I tend to basically come across as very panicked, which I feel quite panicked. And it's hard for me to basically restrain giving all of the information, or like the kind of worst case scenario. My tendency is to want to tell people, if they're not already scared, to try to get them scared so that they'll get more involved. And I realize that's not necessarily the best thing in all cases. So.
Yeah. Anybody else feel that way or has struggled with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. It's like we're like the 1% sort of alarmed, right, part of the population, and probably what got us involved is fear to some extent. Or I know it did for me, and that doesn't work for everybody. It actually paralyzes a lot of people, and so that's one of the challenges: is how do we bring on people who don't respond to that panic? Yeah. Linda, did you have something you wanted to say?
So I'm excited to have like a venue for getting some of my friends engaged that haven't taken action yet. And I've been trying to do this by talking to holistic moms and at my school, but it seems like a lot of people are just so busy
So what I'm hoping is that by planning way ahead with this format that you have, and yeah, there's people who told me they want to get involved, and they've said that, like, I'm so glad you're doing this. Let me know when your next meeting is. So I'm glad I have something that I can offer, and that yeah, there's a format to follow and support. And similar to, well, both Stacey and Michelle, I'm also an introvert, although I can also, I'm not too socially shy. So that part isn't too scary, but what I find I'm struggling with is how to not turn people off with my intensity around the issue, because I also feel very alarmed, and I'm just encouraging people to understand, like, what's at stake. And so sometimes I think I want to take them from where they're at, which maybe is like at a 1 to a 10, and I realize there's just stages that they have to go through. So I'm looking forward to this training to help, you know, navigate that conversation where people meet them where they're at and not push them further than they're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, in many ways, that's a great segue into sort of the structure of the house party, because I think in a lot of ways that's, you know, a lot of these things that we've talked about, we've really tried to address in the structure. The one thing sort of as we, before I dig into specifics, to remember the idea that, like, learning how to do this work is like learning how to ride a bicycle, and the only way to do it is to do it and fall off and get back on the bicycle, and you'll get it. And so I feel like I've gone through so much of what you're talking about, and one of the best ways to learn how to deal with that is just to do it and, you know, and learn from it.
And Vanessa, your voice has gotten soft suddenly. Do you think your mic is still on full volume?
There. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Maybe I just need to keep my voice even and clear. I have a cold, so maybe that's why my throat is scratchy. All right, so I'm going to jump in because I'm realizing we're behind time here. So just very, very quickly, sort of really big picture, here are the really core components of the house party, and Robin is going to dig into these. And I will share this document with you, and you don't need to look at the small print right now, but I just thought I would put these things. So the first thing is you want to create that relational experience, because really what gets people involved is other people, and they come back because they like, you know, there's a social experience to this that's really important. And then Michelle and Stacey and Linda, like you've talked about, and I know Robin struggled with that, and I've struggled with that, like when we feel the urgency, we've probably all had the experience of, like, being way too heavy-handed, sharing, you know, all the terrible facts, and then having people look at us like we have, you know, 3 heads, and like that we're just too overwhelming, they just totally shut down. And so what social movements, you know, people who've studied this stuff have learned is that urgency, that people act when there's a combination of urgency and hope. And so those are 2 really important components. You really want to make people feel like there's an urgent need to act, but it needs to feel like there's something that you can do about it. And so if you just talk about all the bad news and then you don't give people, that was one of the problems where Al Gore got criticized with Inconvenient Truth, where, you know, you watch this you know, full-length movie, and then at the end you get told to go switch a light bulb, and there's a real disconnect, right, between the scale of the crisis and sort of the solutions, and you feel totally powerless. And so a really important piece of the house party is, yes, reminding people, like, why we need to act, and then giving them the hope that there's actually something we can do about this. And not only can we do something about it, but we are the people to do it, right? Mothers have a really, really important role to play, and they're going to be game changers. And in fact, we need mothers in order to win. And then you want to just focus people on taking actions in the next step, because, you know, we hear, like, people don't like to come to meetings because you sit around and you talk. And really, one of the ways that you develop volunteers and activists is by giving them actionable next steps that they can manage, that feel meaningful, and, you know, that put them on that path so they don't sit there feeling overwhelmed thinking they can't do anything. So those are really the core components. And then the last one on page 2 is, you know, we are a learning organization, and it's really important to get feedback, both in terms of, you know, the facilitator learning from their experience, like, so next time you're that much better at facilitating. It gives people a sense that they are shaping the movement because we're listening to what they have to say and what works for them and what doesn't. And that's how we learn how to get better. So those are the really 6 sort of big pieces of the house party. So now I'm going to turn it over to Robin, who's going to dig into the slides and really show you sort of the different steps. And Robin, I'm making you presenter, right? I can't hear you. Oh.
Yeah, I was just going to ask how do I share my screen? But you make me
share on the menu bar.
Okay.
And then you share
my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to go to present. Okay. First, let me just say that Vanessa, I might need you to take over towards the end, possibly, because my childcare fell through and my daughter is getting dropped off a little earlier than I thought. So,
no problem.
From kindergarten. But I'll try to get through it before she gets home because we're running a little behind anyway. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being interested in hosting a party. And I'm just going to walk you through this presentation. I've done it 5 times, and I find it very rewarding to get moms in a room talking about this over a glass of wine. I still get butterflies every time, though. I'm also an introvert, so don't feel like I'm doing this because I'm super extroverted and like talking in front of a bunch of people about climate change, because it's really not in my comfort zone. But I'm so alarmed about this, like you all are, that it's compelled me to do this. So, you know, and I, like I said, I believe that if more moms knew the risk, and knew what they could do and how to get involved, that they would. So that's why I facilitate these parties. Okay, so I usually have this slide up when the house party starts, and you can, probably in the beginning, you will be the host of the party, but ideally, you'll eventually have other moms who are willing to do the hosting, and you just show up and give the presentation. But then you don't have to worry about cleaning your house and preparing snacks and refilling people's drinks, and somebody else will take care of that. And the other great thing about somebody else hosting is that they will then invite their friends and neighbors and family, and that's how that's how we grow, is when moms you know, bring in their own network into Mothers Out Front. So we have about 30 minutes of social time, have snacks and drinks and get to know each other, and then and so I had this slide up, and then we'll sit down and go through the agenda quickly, and so we talk about, we have our introduction, sharing stories, go through a little bit of the science and urgency, and then focus mostly on the hope about Mothers Out Front, what's happening locally, and how we can take action together. And then we try to leave time at the end to kind of wrap up and do our, you know, pluses and deltas of what we can improve, what they thought was good, and what we can improve for next time. And get back here. So I start off by just, you know, thanking everyone, thanking the host, and explaining that I'm not an expert on everything, and that there's a lot of great resources on the Mothers Out Front website, and that they will get to take home some handouts to read and have links to more information. We say that we're here to hear about their stories and concerns and tell them about Mothers Out Front and the hopeful but urgent message we are sharing, as well as the important and positive work we're doing. And we just say that we hope that they'll join us in whichever way they can, and that they start to see themselves as active supporters of a vibrant, growing movement that wants and needs them, and that there's lots of ways to get involved, and no way is too small. And then group guidelines, we just say that we want to hear from everyone, but you know, we ask that everybody allow time for others to share their thoughts, and that we listen carefully to each other. And then we go right into trying to get everybody sharing their own story. So I usually start by sharing in 3 minutes or less what brought me to Mothers Out Front, and we also, the person speaking, I have a shell, but I'm sorry, someone's calling me on the other line. And whoever's talking gets to hold the shell and then pass the shell on to the next person, but it could be a stick or a rock, but something from nature. So, you know, we just let everybody have a couple minutes to share why they came, and that helps to, you know, find common ground. It helps me see where everybody's coming from and where they are related to climate change, and it helps the moms that are in the room see that they're not alone in their concerns or in their, you know, lack of awareness about what's going on. Because I have had moms come who really didn't know that this was a real problem.
Robin, I have a quick question about how much time do you give each person? Do you time people, or sort of you give them a limit? Because I can imagine some people could just go on the whole meeting.
Yes, I do. Since the groups that I've had are not super large, usually average about 3 or 4, then I let people have about 3 minutes each. And I find that trying to do it in less than 3 minutes, I'm always cutting them off right in the middle of a good thought. So if you have a small group, I'd say try to allow about 3 minutes. And if it's a bigger group, try to keep it to more like 2 minutes. So then, after everyone's shared, we go on to talk about the science and the urgency by showing videos. And there's 3 videos that I think you guys received. The cost of carbon, the Bill McKibben do the math video, and the healing curve video. And I've done it where I've done the cost of carbon and do the math. Last time I tried, I just found out about the healing curve video before my last party, and since it was very California-based and talking about some of the impacts in California, but it does also talk about urgency, I used that followed by some slides that talked about the numbers from the Do the Math video.
Can I add a little thing here? I think one of the key things that Robin's pointing out is, you know, so we have these basic components, but you can adapt components to what you think will make sense and really speak to your audience. So that's why there are different options. And the Do the Math video just became completely outdated this morning with Bill McKibben's new article about the latest. So.
Oh, that's good to know. So we need to update our slides then too, I guess. So, you know, after, this is always one of the trickier parts of the party for me is to, what do you do after you bombard people with bad news, especially if they weren't aware of it before. And so I think it's, you know, it's okay to let people sit in silence for a minute, and then it's, you know, it's a good idea to ask some open-ended questions. Sometimes people will have a lot to say afterwards, and sometimes everyone just sits there and doesn't know what to say. And that's okay. And so just having a couple open-ended questions to ask, like, was there something that surprised you about this video? Was there something more you'd like to know? And just see if that helps draw out some reactions from people. But don't dwell on it too long, or it might cause people to shut down and get overwhelmed. So after the videos, then here's my slide about the 3 numbers, the 2 degrees, the 565 gigatons of carbon that scientists say we can burn and stay under that number, and versus the amount of gigatons of carbon the fossil fuel industry has in their reserves. And you know, I explained that this is showing that there's a big gap right now between the policies and energy choices that we need to have in place to stay under 2 degrees Celsius warming, and the policies and energy choices that we have today. But that there is hope. So this is the part where we move on to hope, and we leave behind our the bad news and talk about what can people do. And so decision makers hear from fossil fuel industry all the time, and that's why things are so skewed in their favor. So we, as moms, need to step in and be the voice. And so Mothers Out Front's goal is really to build the power to change the decision that our leaders are making. And, you know, just as a kind of a side note to you guys, I've been meeting recently with, I've been to meetings recently with our local chapters of the Sierra Club and Orange County for Climate Action, and they all want to build coalitions and work with the city leaders to, you know, to get them to take more action to reduce emissions. But they keep saying that they need a broad base of citizens behind them, and that's, you know, that's really what Mothers Out Front, that's where we come in. And when I tell them about what Mothers Out Front is all about, and that we're building a grassroots movement to get moms engaged, everybody gets so excited, and that we are starting this and building it here in Southern California to help move the ball forward. All right.
And quickly building on that, I mean, we just had our first big win in Massachusetts, where the legislature, at the state level, the legislature passed a law to prevent the utilities from passing on the cost of new pipelines to the customers. And, you know, it was mothers showing up at these hearings and testifying and telling their stories that really made a difference. Like, I mean, not that there were a lot of groups involved, but you had the policy groups and you sort of had the grass tops, you know, sort of people who'd figured out what we needed to do and writing the legislation and sort of doing the lobbying. But ultimately it was like, you know, whatever, tens and tens or hundreds of moms showing up and saying, like, this is what we want you to do. And so that we've seen this in action, and it works.
Yeah. So then we move on to this quote from Kelsey Worth, and I usually have asked someone to volunteer to read the quote to just kind of solidify some of these ideas in everybody's mind. And then we go on to talk about Mothers Out Front. And I let them know that our Mothers Out Front story is a story of hope, and it was founded by 2 mothers, Kelsey and Vanessa, in 2013. So I talked them through these slides, and I won't, or these points one by one. We talk about the vision and goals of Mothers Out Front to create a national movement and push for a swift, complete, and just transition away from fossil fuels to clean, renewable energy, and as well develop leadership and passion of our ever-growing base of volunteers. And then on this slide, you know, with these clear goals, we take action, and this is how we take action. So I read through each of these lines just to kind of explain, you know, what specifically we're doing about this issue. The next slide is just called Why Mothers? And I throw this out there as a question to the guests to try to, you know, think about and discuss. And then after a minute or two of discussing that, I bring up some bullet points, which sometimes we cover and sometimes not. But when we speak up, people listen, natural networkers and connectors, and we bridge all cultural, racial, religious, economic, political, and generational boundaries. And there is some language in the guide about inclusion. Sometimes people ask about can non-mothers be involved, and I always say yes. But there is a clear reason about why we focus on the voices and leadership of mothers and caregivers. But it's mothers and others, what I tell them. Okay, the next, then I have a couple videos that I show because people want to see what are moms doing. And so these are a couple videos about some actions that in Massachusetts. First, Mary Lou telling her story about what made her want to be part of Mothers Out Front, and then Claire Humphrey. And I always show this one. I show the Mary Lou one is great too, but I feel like the Claire one I always make time for, even if we're running behind, because it's such a powerful video about moms being in the Boston City Council chambers, standing up to protect their kids' future. And it's very powerful. And I think it really turns on a lot of light bulbs in people's heads. And I've even had some moms say, I'm super busy and I can't be one of the regular parts of this team, but I can be a body. I can show up at a meeting like this with the Mothers Out shirt front on and be a body to show my support. And that's what we're trying to get is, that's why I said no level involvement is too small. Okay. All right, the next slide. Oh, and after this, it's good to ask them, what does it take? How do you think that they got to this point? And what does it take to be able to have so many moms show up at an event like this? So we talk about, the next slide is about power and how really, leaders don't lead, they follow. And if we want them to, if we want to change the decisions that they're making and the choices they're making, we need to let them know what choices, what we want them to do, and don't expect them to just do it without us being involved. And the next couple slides show examples of effective movements where power was built from the ground up, including the civil rights movement, where there's actions at 3 levels. First, at the bottom, the individual level, people taking, sitting at a lunch counter, and that helps to get action to happen at the city and state level through legislation or other wins. And then once you have things happening at the city and state level, it's easier to get things happening at the national level. So it just shows that, power changes are made from the bottom up. And the next example is the suffragette movement. It's the same idea. They began with individual actions, worked up to community level actions, and that eventually got action at the state and national level. So Mothers Out Front, vision is to have teams of mothers working across the country to get elected officials to work for a transition from coal, gas, and oil to renewable energy. And so the way they'll do that is to have building blocks of states that are made up of community teams. So I've got a community team started in Orange County here, and you'll all, if you start to facilitate parties, have your own community teams that you'll start up, and so you'll be one of those triangles in the state of California. And this is also showing the 3 levels of action, how we take action. At the individual level, you know, we build relationships to get people engaged and empowered to act. And we do that by connecting one-on-one with them. And one example of an individual action is to switch to renewable energy, because that pushes fossil fuels off the grid. I think my daughter might be home.
Oh.
But I may have to hand this over to you for a minute, Vanessa, while I get her set up.
I just realized that I don't have your slideshow.
Right. Okay, this should take just a second. Well, let me get to the next. Maybe you could, do you want to talk about this next slide? Or did we,
yeah.
or
I think maybe.
No.
Yeah, why don't you put the next slide?
Actually, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So I think one of the things, I'm a sort of strategy you want to get into at the house party, and I think that's a good question for you all because you're seeing this for the first time, but because we don't want to overwhelm people with information. At the same time, I think one of the things that is not intuitive to a lot of people is why organizing a team in your community is meaningful in the face of this huge problem like global climate change, right? And we've seen like people's instincts often is to go straight to the top, right? And the power at the top. So the instinct is, hey, let's get 10 moms to call President Obama to tell him to, you know, stop drilling off the Atlantic coast. And well, you know, you're just not going to get him to do that with 10 moms. And so again, that's why building these individuals, the way you build the ability to truly organize, to like teach moms to like testify at public hearings and reach out to each other and host house parties is at the community level scale, because that's where people can see each other, they build relationships, they learn to do it. And, you know, if moms are, and that's doable, and that's how the Obama campaign won, by the way. They just had people organize their communities, but they did it everywhere. And that's really our theory of change for like how we build this national movement. So, and here's an example, so of the 3 levels of action. So, you know, people made
I'm next, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Are you finished with this slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the next couple slides talk specifically about how Mothers Out Front organizes their teams and what's been successful for them in Massachusetts and New York. And so this is called the snowflake model, because ideally you've got 5 or so, depending, you know, it doesn't have to be 5, or 5 or 6 core team people that meet regularly, like every 2 weeks, to organize and plan. But there's not one, everybody's kind of working equally, just on different parts of the team. And and those teams can also be committees where you have other volunteers that are involved in, you know, coordinating house parties or communication. Like we've got one mom who is really good with graphics, so she's not my coordinator, but she's a part on the communications snowflake committee or communications committee. Outreach coordinator, volunteer coordinator, and there are descriptions about what these positions are in some of the materials that you guys will have. And how we build the movement is when somebody, you know, who comes to one of the house parties might be from a different area, and they're inspired to then host a house party and perhaps start up a team in their community. And that's how we get this movement of snowflake teams working together towards a national goal. So we have also a couple examples of just what existing community teams are doing. And this helps kind of solidify things in people's minds too. So the Boston team was really concerned about what they are learning about all the gas leaks that are in Boston and, you know, the amount of methane that is leaking out of them and contributing to greenhouse gases. So they got the city to pass resolutions in support of 2 statewide bills to get the leaks fixed.
And that inspired 30 other communities at Massachusetts to start doing that work. And so that's an example of sort of one team, you know, sort of identifying something they wanted to work on that sort of really worked and spread like wildfire.
Yeah, and that's something that we might eventually take on too. So that's one of the great things is just seeing what's worked in other communities and being able to, you know, build off of that and use maybe some of the same materials that they have, if it makes sense. I just put in a couple of slides for you guys to see kind of what we've been up to in Orange County after just, and this kind of speaks to, you know, I feel like we're just barely starting to scratch the surface, but I feel like even in the little things we've done, we've seen results. And, you know, after just 2 meetings with our Republican member of the House, whose staff said she is very anti-EPA, I already see that she's starting to shift. She's not where we would like her to be yet, but she's just voted, she's starting to vote in a better way on legislation. Like there was a piece of legislation recently that was supposed to defund the EPA's climate research funding, defund their climate research, and she was one of 33 House Republicans that voted against defunding it. And a year ago, I don't know if she would have done that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's because you all are voters, right?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I originally was involved with, and I still, you know, support Citizens Climate Lobby, and if you're familiar with them, their purpose is to lobby Congress to try to pass carbon fee and dividend. And she got to the point where she just didn't even want to meet with them anymore, even when they would fly across the country for one of their 2 lobbying on the Hill days each year. But, you know, I went in with another mom and met with one of her staff, and then we had a follow-up meeting with a different staff member, and now they actually call us to say, hey, so-and-so is going to be in town from Washington, D.C. next week or next month. Would you like to have a meeting set up? And I was just blown away when they called me because, you know, she's a typical like 3% on the League of Conservation Voters scale. You know, she's very anti-environment in her voting. So I feel like that, you know, we're just starting to scratch the surface, and even with a conservative member of the House, we're making a difference. And we've sent a few postcards in to the California Public Utilities Commission opposing a new natural gas pipeline in Southern California. They delayed the vote for a couple months, and then finally they unanimously, you know, declined or, you know, voted it down and didn't approve it. And then lastly, this is just the smallest effort. It was just a phone call. I had heard, you know, that our school district was going to be doing a solar project more than a year ago, and then had heard that they just kind of backburnered it, and it was delayed. And so we just made a phone call to the school district to just inquire about the status of the project, and just left a voicemail, never actually spoke to anybody. And then within a week, I heard that they had signed a contract and, you know, moved forward with the project. So I don't know if that was a coincidence, but after sitting around for a year.
Yeah. We are hearing these stories consistently, and so there's this balance of like, we need to grow this movement, you know, we need a lot of people involved, and it doesn't take that much to get decision makers to make different decisions, you know, and we've seen it like in Massachusetts and New York where a board of selectmen will be, you know, on the fence about an issue, and the moms show up and they just get unanimous support. Yeah. So it is, our voices really are powerful because we're voters and we have influence, you know, and so anyways.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just try to wrap this up. You know, these are just some numbers about the number of people I've gotten involved so far in Orange County. We're about 56 engaged in one way or the other, and just the final note there that the vast majority of them were not engaged on climate change before they were approached by Mothers Out Front. Is what I think is the coolest number on here. A couple of the, we decided that kind of our first campaign would be to give people something concrete, some concrete action to take that was, you know, local action. And so we love to tell you guys more about, especially the OHM Connect program, because that's a California-wide program where you get earn money when you conserve during peak periods. And then we did some research around switching the source and to clean energy and found that SoCal Edison has a new program where you can sign up and basically switch your home electricity to clean energy without installing solar panels. So that's some more concrete things we tell guests that they can do. And we're in the process of getting that all up on the Mothers Out Front website so that people can just go to mothersoutfront.org and find the links they need to sign up for these programs. We talk a little bit about some of the local impacts around here. And then at this part of the presentation, we try to get everybody a little bit more engaged and split off into pairs to talk about what skills, talents, and qualities they might be able to share, and who do they know that might be interested in this effort, and just get them talking amongst themselves. That kind of gets them doing the work and gets them thinking about how we can, what they can offer to this movement. And then we come back as a group and go through the last 3 questions there about what did they learn, did they learn something about themselves, and what ideas they have. So that kind of helps get everybody, give them a little feeling of ownership and start to help them feel like they're part of this. Okay, we're almost there. Then we go through a few ways that they can be involved. We, at the end, I feel like I'm missing something. Bear with me. So, you know, Mothers Out Front is growing, and we need to build quickly and engage more people all the time. So we let them know that anything they can do is valuable, even a few hours a month. And I pass out a next steps form to have everybody sign it, or not sign it, but fill it out before they leave. Sometimes they ask if they can take it home, but then you'll probably never get it back. So it just takes a minute, and it's just really just checking off some check boxes about what is their comfort level as far as being involved. And that helps them kind of helps get commitment from them to be involved. And then we talk about what they can do today, and I also give them a handout with some concrete actions they can do it right away. And then we have one more quote that I ask someone to read, and just kind of wrap up by, you know, saying that, you know, you can do your part by being involved with Mothers Out Front, and we really need your help to grow the movement. And then I wrap up by thanking everyone for coming. I thank the host for the opportunity to get together. We go around and do pluses and deltas because we like to share with our house party team so we can keep improving on the party. And then I let them know that the host is going to be sending out a survey, and there's space to add things that they think of later or don't want to share right here in front of everyone, and ask them to please fill it out and submit it. And it really doesn't take very long, but it does help us a lot. And then that's pretty much it. We do the pluses and deltas, and I collect their next steps forms, and that's it.
Oh, you're muted, Linda.
Yeah, I just realized that. Just a quick question. The survey, is that also more pluses and deltas but more anonymously?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
Cool.
Wow, thank you, Robin. That was awesome. I can't tell you how amazing it is for me to, Kelsey and I started facilitating these house parties. Like, we didn't know what we were doing in 2013, like going to, from house to house, and every time we get feedback and whatever, and it's just so amazing to watch where like you've actually never been to a house party. Like, and then now you're training other people. It's just incredible. So thank you so much. It's really great. All right, so yeah, so now we have time for discussion and questions, further questions. And I guess, yeah, I'd love to hear sort of what you're feeling, your comfort level, what you thought, what you might feel like you need more of before you're ready, et cetera.
Well, I'm really inspired. I really like that thought of urgency and hope, having that balance between both, and just showing moms getting involved and having an impact. Like, I'm already just really inspired. And I did think a couple practical questions, like, do you wear your Mothers Out Front t-shirt when you host or facilitate, and maybe have t-shirts there for people to purchase?
I usually haven't worn my shirt. There's really no reason why I couldn't, I guess. And no, I haven't had them for purchase yet, but that's probably something I should do. I have offered to anybody who hosts that they just get a t-shirt as one thank you for for being a host.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that what you said about, like, they can get involved at any level. So even if it's just coming to a city council meeting, wearing the shirt and holding a sign, I think that's like a great first step for someone who's really shy or doesn't know what to say, but they could just come in person and show up. So anyway, yeah. That's inspiring. And
can I ask a quick question about the next steps from? So one of the things that we're learning quickly is the limits of foundation money, and how we really need to start raising money from mothers so that we retain ownership over what we do. And so we definitely, one of the things people have appreciated about house parties is that they're not about raising money. And we know that there's some people out there who would be happy to write a check, and that it's not a bad thing to ask. And so in Massachusetts, I think it's on the next steps form, as like that's one of the things you can do is just support us financially. So is that part of the California?
Yeah, it's on there, but I wouldn't say that I've talked it up because, yeah, I was, I guess, a little afraid of it just seeming like a sales pitch, or not really a sales pitch, but like,
right.
I didn't want them to think that getting money out of them was most, the primary reason that they were there.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But I'm sure there's a way to say it, without it seeming like that. So I just have to think that through a little bit. But it's on there, and so, yeah, it would just have to be, you know, I'm sure it could be brought up at the end.
Yeah, and we're developing, we have a fundraising team right now that's really thinking about this stuff and not, you know, sort of just in general, how do we build like a Bernie, like sort of crowdsource movement so that we have more, you know, just, I mean, we'd love to hire an organizer in California, right? And we just, you know, foundations, we're maxing out that pool, and it's really clear that we need to expand our individual giving. So anyways, there's a lot of great work that's being done sort of from high donors and like big level, but the crowdsourcing actually really does make a difference as well. So anyways, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay. Great. You guys have any other questions or?
I'm curious if someone asks, like, so what do we do next?
Yes. Well, that's going to be different depending on where your team is, I think. So in the beginning, I think, you know, the focus is really to try to reach more moms and build your numbers a little. It's a bit of a chicken and egg, though, I've found, because people want to do something concrete, and when you say, well, we're just trying to build our numbers, then that doesn't seem like that you're doing something really concrete. But I guess it is if you talk about, you know, how, you know, just getting more moms engaged so that you can have the people to take it to the next level. So we did that. I mean, that's kind of what I said in the first couple meetings. It's just, you know, if you can host a house party, that would be great. If you know anyone else who might be interested, you know, talk to them about this. But then at some point, I started to invite people to come to meetings to talk about what could be our first kind of campaign. So right now, I guess when they say what's next, I have our Ohm Connect team that they can join, and they can also sign up for the green rate program through our utility. And, you know, but we want to go beyond that. And so I think right now we're sort of just at the point where we're focusing on this first campaign, but we're also thinking ahead to the future. And, you know, what they can do next is help us figure out what that next step would be and what the next campaign at the community level might be.
I have a question following up on this for all of you, which is, you know, now that we do have, I mean, when we started, we really didn't know what we're going to do. And so it was like, well, we need you all to figure it out, and we need you to recruit more moms so we can decide together what our first campaign is going to be. But like we do have a track record now in Massachusetts and New York, and now starting in Virginia, and now in Orange County, right, of basically, I'm going to share my screen for a sec. Oh, can you make me presenter, Robin, please?
Oh.
That you just put your mouse on top of my image, and then it'll ask if you want me to pass me the ball.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. Okay. So the idea of having a timeline that shows, like, here's how, like this, you know, let's say the Boston team, how they got to that gas leaks hearing. And the first step was they had a house party, and then they formed a team, and then they, you know, and then they decided what their goal was going to be, and then, thank you, and then they organized. So here's an example of what a timeline looks like, and this is the timeline for all of Mothers Out Front, and so it's a little bit overwhelming. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this, but it's an example of, you know, you sort of show, so 7 moms met, and then we had the first house party, and then, you know, we launched, and then we developed a strategy, and et cetera, et cetera. So you could create one of these for your community that orients people to here's where we are in the process, right? And give people a sense of where you're going. And so it gives meaning to, like, So if you host these house parties, then we can get to that meeting where we decide what we're going to work on together. Do you think that would be, I'm thinking like if we had an example of a timeline that happened in a real community and then saying, here's where we are right in this community right now. Would that be helpful?
Yeah. I think that'd be very helpful.
Okay, yeah. I'll develop that. I think that makes sense. Okay. Other thoughts or questions?
Have you ever had anyone, I guess, seem incredulous about the urgency of it, or no?
No, and I meant to just say that, yeah, I mean, I get butterflies every time because it's just, you know, it's getting up in front of people and talking about a tough subject, and you never really know where people are and what they're going to say. But so far, there hasn't been anything that I would consider negative as far as the reactions from people. So, you know, it's been a range of super excited and gung-ho to get involved to, you know, a little shell-shocked, but want to be involved. I think everybody who's come has pretty much wants to be involved. You know, nobody has just walked out of there saying, nope, it's not for me. Some of them have more time to give than others, but it's been very positive so far. And this is Orange County, not Northern California. So I'm in the heart of Republicanville here.
Can I ask how many moms you invited and like what your ratio of people actually attend?
That's a great question. You have to invite a lot more moms than you hope to get. Because just moms are busy and trying to find a date when a lot of people can come is next to impossible. So you just have to pick a date, I've found. Or if there's somebody who really wants to get involved and is just dying to, then maybe work with them to find out what's a good date for them and then build it from there. But you can always, you know, if they can't make it to the first one, then they might come to the second one. But I say I try to invite at least 30 people, 30 to 40 people for one. But you don't have to. And actually, that might be, if you have, you know, less than that, but people who you know really well, then that could be more, generate more attendees than just adding on a few acquaintances that you don't know as well, if that makes any sense. Because I've found that, you know, the people that know you the best or know the host the best and value their thoughts and opinions are the ones most likely to show up.
Yeah.
And do you just ask people in person when you see them via email? Do you have a little card? How do you do it?
So there's actually a template, an email template that Mothers Out Front shared with me that is like a suggested email that you can send to everybody. And so that's what we do, but it's, you know, it doesn't have to be the exact wording of what's there. It's just there as more of a guide or a suggestion. And so I've passed that on to the two moms that have hosted to say, here's some suggested language, because it's hard to know even how to word this so that you're not too scary sounding or too over the top and alarmist. So I've shared that email with the hosts, and then they tweak it to what they're comfortable with and then send it out to everybody. But then we always follow up, or the host always follows up with them, ideally with a phone call. because a lot of times people just don't get the email, or it ends up in their spam if you're sending it to a lot of people. So if you see them, that's great to just say, hey, just get my email. But I have found that it's very important to physically talk to them and say, hey, do you think you'll be able to make it if you haven't heard back from them? And usually if I just send out a follow-up email to everybody saying, please respond, that still doesn't get most people to respond back. So I know it seems weird to call people these days because we're so used to not calling people, but I have found that that's the best way, and that people, and then you can kind of get a sense of if they can't make it, do they sound interested or do they not sound interested, and maybe, even if you don't get a lot who can actually come to the party, you'll kind of find out who might be interested who you wouldn't have known were interested before, so then you can keep them on your list for next time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of making a really beautiful Evite invitation to make it festive and fun and special, click on the envelope, to see it, and then it would help manage the guest list as well. I'm just planning my daughter's birthday party, so it's on my mind to use an Evite. That sound like it might be effective?
I haven't tried that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Vanessa?
I really like the festive, and I think, again, people, show up for, in part because it's a social thing. Or a lot of people show up because they just want to spend time with their friends or people they know and have a glass of wine initially. So it's actually an interesting idea. I think what Robin said, and as you know, Linda, just from your own experience, following up with people with a phone call is always the key to get people to show up. But yeah, it's a good idea, I think.
I've seen that in their inbox more, who turned down going to a party?
Right, it's a party, right? It's
right.
not
or not responding.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely tossed up the fact that there will be wine,
That helps.
That kind of helps and, lightens it up a little bit.
Right, it's a social thing. It's not, it doesn't have to be this
I had one mom say that she just came because she likes me and I said there would be wine. So, and now she's, involved, so.
That's a common story. I mean, it's a lot of people, that's how they get involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 8 of, and I want to respect our time. So I'm wondering how you all are feeling sort of from, from 1 to 10, sort of what's your comfort level moving into this and sort of taking this on. So there's a house party facilitation manual. We can get, I've recorded this training, so you can watch it again if you wanted to sort of study up a little bit. And what do you think you might need? So if, from on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your comfort level for going out there and trying this and hosting your own house party, and what do you think you need, if anything, to sort of feel more, sort of totally ready? And I'll start with Linda.
I think I'm at a 9. I'm being ready.
Woo!
Yeah, and I think Stacey and I are going to co-facilitate, and I'm going to host here, and so I think it's for us to maybe practice together a little bit, do a drop run and get clarity on who's doing what. So it's kind of more of the logistics and the planning and the practicing, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, maybe asking questions of Robin or you, Vanessa, afterwards if we have things that come up that we don't know about.
Great. And Stacey, how are you feeling?
I'd say I'm at an 8.
Wow, that's pretty high too. What about?
It was really clear. It was really helpful. The slides make it seem really doable.
Great. Were there any pieces where you felt sort of shakier or less clear?
Let me see. I just took some notes. Let me look back and see. I think with the numbers part of it, doing the urgency part of it.
Okay. What about you, Michelle? How are you feeling?
I feel like a 6, but I'm going to say 7.
Okay. And what do you feel you need to get to a higher level?
I have been promoting, I'd say, like kind of like the worst case scenario thing, and it's hard for me to back away from that. But I would definitely be interested in trying to find people to attend or to, learn more about Mothers Out Front. I just don't think I can host a party, but I definitely want to support what you folks are doing.
Great. Okay. And maybe you can attend, or you can find people to host, to attend Linda and Stacy's house party, and and take your time getting more comfortable if that's what you need. So. Great. All right. So we're going to quickly do pluses and deltas because that's really part of our core practice and it's really important. So if you could share some of the things that worked really well for you as part of this training and that you liked, and then we'll start with the things that worked, and then we'll talk about things that could have made it better. And again, honesty is good because that's how we learn. And so, what are things that worked?
I really liked hearing about Robin's experience with the conservative politician. That really made me see how a difference could really be made that I wouldn't have assumed, it could make a difference.
Great. Others?
I liked a lot about it. I think that the way that you share that we can shape this movement is really helpful and empowering and motivating. So that's, I think you do a good job of that. I like the timeline. I think that could be helpful for people. It was helpful for me, and I think it could be helpful for other people to see where we're at and where we can go. I like the stories as well with the legislator and the solar panels on the school and what was done in Boston. I can't really think of a delta right now.
Okay. What about you, Linda?
Yeah, I found it all really helpful. I love the slides and the feeling that I could just take the slides and use them or tweak them. It makes it feel more doable. I don't have to recreate the wheel. And especially the timeline, I do also think that's really great when people maybe are feeling like we're just getting going. It feels kind of amorphous to see like, yeah, this is the start of something big. That's really empowering. So yeah, and it was helpful to hear from an experienced person like you, Robin, but not that long ago, to see like, oh, look at what you're doing. Like, we could get there pretty quick. So, I enjoy that.
And do you have any deltas? Any things that you would change that would make it better, or things that weren't part of it that would have been good to see?
One little thing is the very first slide, the welcome slide that's up in the beginning. It seems kind of dry without a picture. Like I just went on the website and made this little binder for Mothers Out Front and just put some pictures up from, what do you call it, TikTok. And so maybe just a picture of people on there. That could be like inspiring. But in terms of the training, it was great. I'll think of some more maybe, but right now I'm good.
Michelle, did you have some deltas?
No, I can't think of any, but if I do, I'll also just send them along.
Great. What about you, Robin? Do you have pluses and deltas?
I just thought this was so cool, and let's see, that's not really very helpful, but I think one delta might be our facilitation guide. I realized kind of as I was preparing for this, may just need to be fleshed out a little more and probably tweaked a little bit for California, but not too much. And because you had made some good points, Vanessa, that I think should probably be captured
I took some
in
notes.
there.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think you guys got the facilitation guide, but that's, you know, that'll walk you through slide by slide, kind of. Yes, and Lauren's here. So. And so that was, I guess, a delta and a key learning for me. And I just thought it was great to get to talk to all of you. And I'm here for you to, support you going forward up there, however I can. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I thought you did a fantastic job, Robin. And, I started meeting with Robin in January on Skype every other week to start sort of showing her the ropes. And I'm just blown away by the work that you've done. So it's really wonderful. And I'm so excited that you all are excited about it and to see what happens in California. So, and a delta, a key learning is I just learned a ton about things that we can improve. So that's been great to get your feedback. And I don't really have a delta either. So thank you all so much. I'll send you the recording of the video so that you can have that. Oh, I guess one thing is, do you have a scheduled house party?
November 13th.
Excellent. All right. So you have a clear next step, because when trainings always need to be embedded in next steps so that you use the skills as soon as possible so that you get some results. And, we don't just sort of get on this and learn and then forget the skills. So I'm really glad that you're doing that, and I can't wait to hear how it goes.
Vanessa, are they set up with all of the materials, or what's the next step on that?
Great question. I don't know.
Okay.
So we need to figure that out. Yes. Maybe we can have a follow-up call, Linda. You and I were talking on Monday, right?
Right.
So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Robin, are there any ways that you are thinking right now that you can be supportive, or were you just asking in general, keeping me accountable, which I love?
Oh, both.
Okay.
So I can, I have a folder in a Google Drive folder I can share with Linda. I think everything is in there. So, and I can just see if there's anything missing.
I think that's great, because I think, again, you're developing a California-specific.
Well, actually, I can share it with anybody who wants it from this call, not just Linda, but.
Yeah.
I would love that too.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think, you've done a lot of work that makes sense for where you are, and so sharing that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Great. Well, it's 5:01, or it's what time is it over there?
1 minute past
2:02.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this call today, and have a great rest of the day. And
thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.